live stream the meeting. Now, brace yourself. One, I think you're all aware of the fact that this is probably going to be recorded, but what you may not have been aware of was that now that we're doing a YouTube live, I mean, my massive fan base is about to pile in. So yeah, so be prepared. Good. Hey, it's the September edition of Cloud Native Austin. Thanks all for coming. If you've been to one of our meetups before, then you understand that it's jam-packed full of some pretty bad jokes. It's also a place where we do things fairly informally, as well as try to socialize a bit. Used to be that we would do that with a cold one or two in our hands and in person. And since that's not happening now, we do desire for this not to be a webinar style thing. Rather, this is a meetup. And so a meetup is, well, the meetup's informal. And the reason that I'm here is, well, it's one, because I enjoy sharing things that I learn, but it's mostly for you. It's mostly so that through your learning, I selfishly get to learn. And so it's kind of the theme here. A little bit about Cloud Native Austin. It was, well, it was not called this previously, but it was, I think, the first meetup in the US to become a CNCF meetup. And since that time, 5 years later, we've got at least one other in Austin that's sponsored by the CNCF. A lot of things and technologies to talk about in the CNCF. Since we're talking about the CNCF actually earlier today, just 4 hours ago, one of the hats that I wear is as the CNCF SIG network chair, and was hosting that meeting and talking a lot about service meshes actually. That special interest group is the home base for all of the network and traffic related CNCF projects. So Envoy, Linkerd, Core DNS, gRPC. There's a host of them, and growing by the day. As a matter of fact, two of the projects that we will speak about on this call or on this meetup are likely to become CNCF projects within about 7 weeks. And so highly appropriate that this is a CNCF meetup. A couple of things that I would say, the last few times that we've met, there have been some others speaking, which is good. There's also been some talks from me, and that's out of necessity, really. This meetup is as much yours as it is mine. I'm the unfortunate soul on the other end of like the organizing and trying to get some other geeks together to exchange, but that doesn't mean that it's my agenda. So I guess I'm trying to encourage you that, like, if you're spending time here, like this is yours as well. Part of that is just sharing and asking some questions. One of the ways that you can share is by giving a talk. So you can, there's a simple Google form to fill in if you think if you got something to say. Sometimes people want to sponsor as well. On that subject, there's other ways of sharing other than talking, because it can be a lot of prep. The other way of sharing is just things like this. If you're looking for a job, or maybe you're looking for some talent, this is a good place to exchange. So like right now, there's a question for you. If you're out, is anybody out there looking? Anybody been negatively affected by COVID-19? outside of any number of inconveniences. Oh, very good, Paul. We'll catch you on the next one. There's a lot of service mesh things that go on here. I know your connection is really horrible, so but the recording will be up as well. So okay, then the next question here is, well, I guess there's not a next question. The other question is, hey, who's seen something interesting? Anybody know of an upcoming conference, or anyone saw something in the news they thought was kind of intriguing, sort of relevant to the vast cloud native ecosystem out there? Some acquisitions happening, some new technologies announced.
Well, Snowflake came out what yesterday or the day before that, doubled in stock price. I don't know what Snowflake was, but some type of tech kind of. And also, I've noticed an influx of online conferences this fall. I mean, it seems like end of September, October, there's just more coming through my email than I've seen in the last 3 months.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, have you? I'm curious about some of the platforms that you've seen them using. Some are probably fairly atrocious, and others maybe do a decent job of making it feel like an event. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Well, a meetup the other night with Ernest and them used some tool. I don't know what it was. It had some sticky pads or something, and you'd vote and you do, a lean coffee, and you put stuff on sticky pads. Look, the graphics all look great, but I had no idea how to vote on anything or write on anything. So I interacted, but I couldn't really. I mean, he had like 30 people on the call, and it seemed like they only had about 8 to 15 people voting or being able to vote on what's the subject or you want to continue to talk or not in a lean coffee. One that I really, 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 really liked was OSF did 3 1 day conferences this summer, I think about 2 3 weeks apart, and they use Zoom interface, and but they also had some kind of, I don't know what it was called, man. I didn't know you were going to ask me this, but it was really great. It was like a spreadsheet that it was no big deal to you click one thing and everyone can edit the spreadsheet at the same time. And when you click it, you have a certain color, and so if you have something you wanted to talk about or add to, they had a list of what they were going to cover for that hour, and you could interact by writing as the person who was moderating the talk. Anyway, that was really cool, really cool. The it worked right out of the chute, and a whole lot of people interacted. You would enter your name and your company if you wanted. I like that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah,
something interactive sounds.
I attended the what was it, CNCF, the KubeCon EU.
I
Just
can
parts of
barely
it.
hear you.
All right, let me see if I can turn it up. Guess not. That's about it. That's all you get.
That's
um,
better.
okay. Yeah. So the KubeCon EU, and then I spoke at the Open Source Foundation, or sorry, Open Source Summit from the Linux Foundation, and they both had a similar platform. Um, but I thought they did a pretty good job. They make it they like the homepage for the conference was as if it was a conference hall, and so you click around to the various like doorways to sort of
Yeah,
walk around. It was pretty nice. I do enjoy being able to attend those conferences where otherwise I wouldn't be able to travel and take time off work and all that. So It's pretty nice. It did get a little overwhelming because there's so many things happening all at the same time. Uh,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. It was just like that. Yeah, with a bunch of sticky pads and movement. But I missed the beginning of the talk. Like, how do you? I mean, my cursor appeared, but how do you write on them, and how do you vote? Where do you vote on the tablet? That's the only problem I had. Other than that, I was able to follow the talk and the sticky notes and things of that sort. They had like three different columns.
There was an icon thing off the left side, and you could pick a check mark on the icon thing or whatever icon you wanted to, and that's how you put it on a sticky note.
Yeah, they said that, but I couldn't find anything on my screen for some reason.
Yeah. The icon was a star-shaped symbol on the left side.
Yeah, there's like there was a picture associated with my login, and I clicked on that. That was the only icon I had on the left.
Nice. Thanks for that. I wasn't aware of Mural. Um, and they have a $118 million investment to make a real time. It looked like a nice app. Looked like a lot of money to make the app too, though.
Oh yeah, it was really cool. I just couldn't do a couple things, but other than that, it was fabulous.
And yeah, so many apps have been missing the sort of the Google Docs like experience of synchronous multi-user collaboration. It just changes the game. These are, I hadn't considered it until you guys brought it up that geez, there's probably something else that we should be doing here other than slides, or other than like static media. I mean, we've done workshops, and so there's labs that we go through, and people and anyone attending is doing that on their own machine. But I'll have to get this. It's good. Something good to think about is, yeah, it'd be really interesting, actually, just even specific to the technology at hand around service meshes, is to have one up here sharing that we can all look at and actually all poke at and sort of see the effects of one person making a configuration change.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, live demo, and just like here are my slides. I'll switch to the screen I want to talk about now.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, it's been part of the vision for one of the websites that I focus on, and that's been that anyone who visits the site would understand that the site is running on a service mesh, and that they would be able to kind of take control of it. It would both be a learning thing to understand how a service mesh works. They would be able to take control of their own. It would be a choose your own adventure in some respects. As to how they navigate the site and how they can affect changes on the site based on letting them affect the config of the service mesh. It needs to, ideally not let them shoot themselves in the foot, or if they do, give them an escape route. But I think that would be pretty intriguing and a powerful learning tool while people are visiting your site. So I don't mean it. I don't mean your site in general. I mean,
Yeah, I'm following you. Yeah. I was like, what was that one? We used to play 3 Mile Island, and you played until you blew up the world. Or there's several fighter airplanes. It's like, oh, here, go to this website and have all the fun you want. And when you crash the whole world, just reset, start all over again. Is that what you're talking about? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
So, by the way, so Bob brought up actually two other really good call outs. One is Hashiconf that's coming up. I'm aware of a couple of announcements that they'll be making at Hashiconf, and I didn't look to see if there was a price on the conference, but the announcements
I
that
think it's free because it's digital.
nice, cool. Yeah,
But not all digital ones are free. I mean,
Or
there's
if
like
there
$25 or $50.
yeah, there was a $25 donation I think they were asking for on that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was required. It wasn't free.
But it's to a charity. I mean, they're not collecting the money for themselves.
They're still charging money. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not that much versus like a few $100 for a normal in-person conference.
Oh yeah, I agree. But they're charging. I mean, it's not free.
yeah, yeah. No, working on a project with one of the engineers in their CTO office, and spending a lot of time on the weekend working on some stuff with Hashicorp. So yeah, I expect it'll be a good conference. This is a great call out as well. Boy, this has been a few years running now, right?
Oh yeah, it might be close to 10 now. I don't know.
Yeah, that's something. They've been silly enough to put the last couple of talks that I've had there into the volume that they'll put out, which is it's a bright idea. It's a great set of content. They've got all the content there that can help elevate it, and yeah. It's a good one as well. Like that one, I got to imagine it's either, I think has it always been free? Like I thought it was.
Yeah, it's always been free, and it's always been on November 12th.
On November 12th. Okay. Yeah. It's like nice. All right. Well, good. I'm glad that we exchanged, in part because now there's less time to talk.
Just do a live demo then.
Yeah, let's do. Yeah, as a matter of fact, maybe we should just do that. I'll start with a slide or two, but I don't know. Just at any point that I pause too long or it gets too boring, then just holler out and we'll just switch to a demo. We were going to talk about this today, that service meshes, the notion that service meshes bring quite a bit of value. As a matter of fact, for myself, just kind of focused on them, I really consider that they bring a whole heck of a lot more value than the vast majority of users are currently aware of. There's some uses of them that aren't popularized just yet. Those uses are on their way to being popularized. And a lot of the value that, and I will articulate that a little bit later in this talk. I think it's worthwhile to couch what I'm alluding to in context of the notion that the value proposition of why people deploy a service mesh is perhaps not all that distinct from the value proposition of functions of serverless. The value prop there is just focus on your business logic. Developers, bring your business logic. The managed service will take care of the rest. I don't know how to put an asterisk or a caveat next to that statement, but you know what I mean. And that's for, works well for event-driven things, which is some certain percentage of the world's workloads, and the much larger majority of the world's workloads is process-driven things, long-lived processes, right? Things that are listening all the time, which is what service meshes address, both event-driven workloads and long-lived processes, but probably benefit long-lived processes a bit more, or there's more ways in which they benefit them, and which just so happens to be like the 80% of the world's workload. Like most of the workloads run in this way. And so I bring this up to say that of that value proposition, I'm going to articulate it here in a moment. The standard value prop that people know of today, there's probably some more there. So it's a horrible teaser that I just gave. But anyway, my name's Lee. Most of us probably, hopefully, had a chance to meet. If we haven't, there's some of the talks that I give, or some of the there's 2 books that I'm writing right now, which is really painful. They're listed here. But if you want to know more, there's links. Or if we're not connected, please connect up. I wanted to point out Pratik as well. Pratik's a PhD candidate at the University of UT Austin here. Nice guy. He's currently doing an internship at Intel on more toward hardware things. But he's been engaged with Layer 5 for about a year. And he's been helping do some of the studies that we're going to talk about today, some of the studies around the cost of a mesh. I figured I'd toss in like 1 or 2 high-level slides to say mostly that service meshes are a thing, that they are, from my perspective and inevitability, that for many, it's probably for more so than, excuse me, than not, service meshes aren't necessarily a thing that they've got their hands on and have deployed yet, maybe. But they, us will get there. It'll be, if you go into an environment today and people aren't using containers, yeah, there's reasons not to, but you'd probably find that strange enough that you'd say, well, why not? If they're using a few, they're probably using an orchestrator. You would expect that there's an orchestrator there.
Yeah, but on the containers, there's still a lot of people that don't use any type of container technology. I mean, it's amazing. It's like someone was reporting the other day, I think over 70% of companies don't use it 100% through their business. So
that makes sense. And that makes sense that like, hey, 100% of the business logic that they run or the workloads that they run,
yeah, that's my understanding from what that statement was.
Yeah, 100% aren't of those workloads aren't in containers, which is makes a lot of sense. But that doesn't mean that like all of them aren't using containers somewhere, or anyway, be careful with this statistic. Yeah, the statistic was 70% of those queried were not using containers for 100% of their workloads.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I didn't write it down, but that's pretty much what they were.
Yeah. No, but I guess in part, like, hey, your point, irrespective of the numbers, like I totally agree with the point, which is like, hey, there's any number of valid reasons not to be running things inside.
Yeah, and then I still get approached a lot about, hey, we've never been in containers and we're looking into that, and what's the Kubernetes, and where's the map? The other night it was like, how do you figure out all these parts and everything? So we sent him to CNCF, their little page of all the software. He said he had joined a company and didn't know anything about it, and the company wanted to do that. And I said, well, ask your architect. And he said, I don't know if they have one. So yes, that. And then someone else used something called a periodic table I'd never seen before. Looked at a periodic table with color codes, and so you'd select like security and light up all those particular businesses and things.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the CNCF, the roadmap, where they have that little cartoon of a dirt road, and first step is containers and the second step is Kubernetes or something, I forget.
Yeah, like continuous integration. Yeah, the cloud trail map. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's really handy. I used that in my last job to help convince the CIO to move forward. That was and service mesh is on there, I think, towards the bottom.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's been a while since it's been a couple of years. I had a hand in making that.
Nice.
And it's been a few years since I looked at it. But it makes sense that like maybe the service mesh was sort of down the road. But that, to your point, like, yeah, containers being there sort of right at the start, and continuous integration kind of being there early on. And actually, I've got a keen sense of what you mean by how helpful it can be to have a piece of an asset like that, or a piece of literature like that, to be able to say, hey, using using crayons, this is sort of what that looks like.
Exactly, and that it's an official. I can say, look,
Yeah.
the cloud native says this is the recommended path.
Yeah, no, yep, really. And I say the crayons with a smile on my face, because I need crayon drawings quite often. And yeah, for you not for that direction to be coming from a source of authority, if you will, or not out of the same mouth that you're using to tell the person.
Yeah, and it's not just hey, I saw Jim Smith's blog post that says we should do this.
That's really thanks for saying that, because the SIG network that I chair, it like I was saying before, it's not over the these specific projects right here, but it has governance is a strong word, but it has responsibility for all of the rest of the ones that you see in this section. And yeah, we get a ton of feedback about the landscape and the notion that, and it's fun. Like, I enjoy, poking at things as much as the rest. It's fun to say, like, it's really confusing. And it's also, some of this is about, in order to innovate, you usually have to disaggregate. You usually have to have a bunch of competition and figure out what's going on, and find some new paths forward. And over time, a lot of times, the CNCF isn't there to pick a winner, but they will, like, of the projects that are further along and are doing well, they'll take them through those phases of sandbox, incubation, and graduated. And as they go through those phases, they visually represent them a bit larger here. And I was saying before, like, one of the projects we'll talk about it is Meshery, and today, and it's on the landscape here. It's about to head into the CNCF. And so, yeah, I'll go look at the CloudTrail map again, because but I don't see a link to it immediately.
Yeah, it is a little difficult to find. But also, just not to distract you from your talk,
doesn't matter.
But that recent release from the what is it, the continuous integration team?
Yeah.
With their radar. I found that was super helpful too, because that chart you just showed, the actual landscape is huge, and then having that radar to say, hey, these things are what a lot of people are using, and here's some stuff that is getting more popular, and then here's some stuff that's pretty new. So
yeah. And was that one from the Continuous Integration Foundation?
I can't say for sure. I saw Linux Foundation had posted it in like Twitter or something. So.
Okay, then you're right that it probably is from the CNCF. It is. I gave a lot of feedback on that at the last technical oversight committee, which is to say, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to quickly find reference to the radar, but it was to say that it's, yeah, just like the landscape, the radar is a good thing and a bad thing. It's frustrating that it's not all exhaustive, that it's not an all-inclusive list. Like, the last edition of the radar that came out was on observability, and talking about tools for observability. And there were about 32, 35 end user organizations that had participated in saying, here's what we suggest to adopt. Here's what we suggest to wait on for a little while. And I wish it was a lot higher number of participants and a more exhaustive list of, like, options to choose from. But that, yeah.
I was really hoping they would take from the landscape and fill in from there. So I was also a little disappointed in the lack of. It wasn't full like I expected it to be, but still really nice though.
Yeah, no, it's still quite helpful. I mean, to your point earlier about the trail map, that it's another one of those things that you that can really facilitate a conversation. It can really,
Yeah, there we go.
yeah. So there's one that came out this last week, I think, on I think it was this last week, but it was on observability, and so the format is a little bit different in terms of how they wrote it down, but it's still the same 3 rings. And yeah, no.
Isn't there a 4th section to like drop stuff, or like it's depreciated or whatever?
There is that on this radar. I don't believe that to my knowledge, they don't account for that. In general, though, the CNCF does have a motion for exodus, for identifying that, like, hey, that project that once looked promising, sort of its time has come and gone. So there has been either 1 or 2 projects that have more or less sunsetted. And I couldn't recollect. One of them was, I thought it was from Docker. I couldn't recollect what it is, but yeah, to my knowledge, the radar doesn't capture those, but the CNCF does acknowledge that, like, yeah. Thanks for this. Yeah, I really don't much care about the talk that I'm giving today. So it's just like this interchange is much nicer. I might have pointed this out to some of you before. I don't know. If you're fresh on the scene to service meshes, there's a free OReilly report. It's shorter in nature. That is a real good introduction to the space, to what service meshes are and which ones are out there and kind of what do they do. This one, there's a second edition of this coming out in like 3 weeks. So my recommendation would be to go to the Layer 5.io site, subscribe to the site, the mailing list, and then get notified when the second edition comes out. It'll be free, but it'll be up to speed. Fair enough. So this is usually when people articulate the value of a mesh, they talk about kind of 3 things: the fine-grained traffic control, the ability to intercept requests, introspect them, redirect them, kind of dismiss them, do all kinds of things, but to do some heavy lifting on the network. As part of doing that heavy lifting and introspecting packets and requests, and there's a lot of telemetric signals that are produced, logs and metrics and traces that are facilitated. And people are really drawn to that. The third leg, if you will, is around security, which has to do with identity management and making sure that every service has its own identity, and being able to then facilitate mutual TLS in between every service that's in the mesh. I tossed a 4th one on here, which is really the notion that since there is so much the ability to observe and the ability to control, a lot of the value that a mesh will provide happens to do with resiliency, either inducing chaos or kind of controlling chaos. So good. I'm a little bit hesitant about sort of moving through this talk, because I want for any of you to interrupt as we go. And I also am not sure how many of you are totally fresh on the scene here and how many of you have heard this before. The short of it is, even if you're not running things in a container, you can use it. Those services can be on a service mesh. The more services you're running, the more value you would get out of running a service mesh. service meshes are a way of helping modernize infrastructure. It can help you break down a monolith. Um,
So, Lee, if since you
yeah.
are begging for interruption,
Yep.
yeah. So the reason I'm here is because I've been curious of service mesh. I've played with it. It's neat, you know. Um, but at work, we are actively migrating a monolith into uh, containerization, microservices, splitting things off, um, and moving into a Kubernetes world and cloud native and all that other fun stuff. And I see there is a lot of benefit for service mesh. However, you know, we also have a lot of things on our plate, and how, I guess, is there a point where it's like, okay, well, you know, you have 2 or 3 services out there running, it's time to start breaking the ice with the service mesh and bring it in earlier, or wait until you're stable and then also introduce the service mesh on top of a stable migration, or you know, where do you see it fitting in?
Yeah.
Hey, that's my question too. Is what's the basically where's the risk reward? In other words,
Yeah.
I don't need to run a mesh right now. Life is good, but what do I have to run 100,000 containers in a 30-day period to get the return on that investment? You know, or do I
Exactly. Yeah.
have to run 10,000 a month to look to evolve to that? And you know, when do I know that I'm accepting more risk and by not moving to that, and when am I mean, because right now I don't need it.
And
Is that
versus
kind of
the
what you're asking too, Jeff?
and, well, this is Burton was
Oh, well,
speaking
Burton,
before you.
okay. Yeah.
That's all good. But yeah, that's exactly it too. Right. When do you trade the balance of the complexity of adding a service mesh versus the benefits of having a service mesh, and
Yeah.
when does that fall into place? And I'm not sure if there's a specific metric like Brad was asking for
Well,
100,000.
I'll just throw in my opinion, which is if you start auto scaling your microservices, you're gonna want a service mesh to help manage how the traffic goes between those group of microservices between each other.
Yeah, totally. I'm not placating Bob's answer. I'm trying to give it room to breathe. Like, yep.
So general
Yeah.
rule of thumb, you'd say, is
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when the
Yeah.
activity is enough to cause auto scaling, then should invest in implementing a service mesh.
That's a pretty common. You know, it's funny that I don't have. I'm trying to be a little more reflective. I've had 4 different service mesh maintainers up on stage answering this very question. Actually, a few different times. Like this question gets asked essentially every time that I'm like really frequently. And actually, Bert, you probably you have probably asked it a little bit better than most do. A lot of times, it's a fairly pointed question of like, so how many services do I need to be running in order for me to know where's the point of inflection that's like, okay, yeah, I'm running 5. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it? And people get fairly impatient about it. Actually, they want to know, like, no, I'm just, like ballpark. Like, is it 500? Is it like 1? Is it? And like every good answer to, or to any complicated thing, it's, well, it depends. Now that it depends. That said, there's some general guidance, and actually, from my perspective, is, and this is a perspective, is that well, this is a perspective. There are truths in here. So one truth is, even if you're just running one service, you will derive value out of a service mesh. that's only part of the thing. Like the other side of that coin is, okay, well, I'll get value, but like is the return on investment, but there's some investment. So is the value greater than the investment? And the more that time ticks along, the easier it is to say, yes, it is. There are a few meshes that we could even maybe demo today.
Well,
Actually,
yeah, let me elaborate on the question a little more. It's like it's the same thing. Basically, give me an answer from a management point of view, not from if I have all my security analyzed and figured out before I cut my code. Well, yeah, it's going to be better. If I have all my test cases, it's going to be better. But I got 3 guys, and we got 60 days to get a prototype out, and then we're going to go to 80 guys in 6 months, and then we're going to do something else, and then we're going to go to 260 guys, and we're going to do something else. And there's only so much work that you can slice up for people. So if there's no code, then who cares about service mesh and testing and security? But it's just like when you ask this from a security point of view, they go, well, it depends. Of course it depends. What the question is I can't do all the right things at the beginning, even though no matter who you are, because one person can't work more than about 18 hours a day. You can run in maybe longer for a couple of days, but other than that, you know. So that's the direction of the question is
totally.
service mesh. I'm going to run a prototype, and I'm a growing company. I need the code to work, and where is that kind of feeling? Because there's a lot of other parts that also, would help in orchestrating a final solution, and if everyone in the world loves it.
I'll try a new way of answering the question. I hope that this way works. That is, if you've ever been in an environment where there is no CI, there is no continuous integration, or CI/CD, if you want to call it that. I got to imagine that if you've ever been there and you're busy working on building out on your day job and building out business logic applications and functionality, that to take a sprint, a couple of sprints, more than a couple of sprints to set up and invest in CI and get the system going and the scripts and doing automation and like all this, and then it breaks, and then actually the builds are breaking, and then like it didn't look pretty on this side of the wall. If you've ever been on the other side of the wall of having CI deployed, you ain't never going back. You're like, why would you ever wait? Why? Yes, it's going to take a week to like get it right, get all the various levels of the build done, and etc. Why would you ever have that be a manual process? You would only ever like you start a new project, the first thing you do is set up CI, so you don't waste that time.
I understand that. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I mean, I did a lot of consulting in Central Texas and made a whole lot of money going in and solving that particular business problem at huge corporations, Apple, IBM, AMD, and solve those business problems. But even they were, hey, I got only so many headcount to get something to go, and that's just the perspective I'm asking. I understand what you're going through, but you don't have to have it. Have you ever been to a site that doesn't have it? How many containers were they running a month when they said, hey, we got to get this? What was that number?
Oh, sure. Actually, Alan, something had happened to your voice. It was pretty low. I think I got what you said, which was, have you ever been to a site where, in fact, they're not running service mesh yet, and it is a resource constrained environment, and they were doing just fine. Like to finish the thing that I was
Yeah, go ahead.
saying, that is that it's the same thing for mesh. Hey, if you're not running a mesh, you're running it one service, 5 services. Do you ever need an API gateway in front of it? Do you ever want resiliency, to have a virtual IP address, or maybe to have an automatic retry from one service to the next? Maybe just have 2 services that talk to each other. Do you want load balancing? Do you want some rate limiting in there? Do you want to be able to redirect traffic so that you can do a rollout of one version of the software to the next? Like, there's a lot of use cases in there for, and my perspective would be, well, you don't. Most of the time, you probably want about half those things. Like some of those things you can live without, you don't necessarily. But the other half, it's like, hey, great. There's solutions out there that are point solutions for those things that I just prattled off. Service mesh puts them all together, and it's one of those things. This is why I'm saying it's kind of an inevitability. It's like, hey, just like everything else, when containers came around, it takes a while to figure out what's going on, the layers, how to run it, the fact that you can run some using a process manager, run some without, some using a daemonizer. And for the service mesh, it's kind of the same thing. Like there's a reason why it's a thing and has an industry term next to it, because it's big and complicated. For those of you that are running Kubernetes, many of you probably feel fairly comfortable. You also understand that there's a few corners of Kubernetes that you probably don't feel comfortable on. Maybe you haven't gotten to yet. And hopefully you're comfortable with not with the unknown. Networking is difficult, and service meshes help empower people to overcome it. These are some generalities to try to answer your questions better. Is mostly what I'm saying is like the answer to Bert's original question is I'd start now. I'd start at the beginning so that you can consume a service mesh's functionality a la carte. You can go deploy a service mesh and not have it do anything. Don't tell it to do anything. It can still be there. The proxies are there. The traffic is running through the proxies. It's not doing anything. You can tell it, don't generate any telemetry. Don't mess with the traffic. Don't redirect it. Don't encrypt the traffic. Don't create chaos. It can just be transparent and sitting there. You can get not even now. I'm not. What I am suggesting is like deploy it early. What I'm also suggesting is to bite off those pieces of functionality a la carte, to be so that you can get comfort with it as you go, so that you can see also the return investment on each one of those pieces of functions that you enable as you go. Yeah, I think that reduces the mental risk or your psychologically the risk that's involved in running a nice set of services. And then you come over and say, well, we need to dramatically augment the architecture by laying down this new layer. And then it is actually like, any number of meetings and people bickering and touting one architecture over the next. And Alan, for your case, like, I think you're a stronger individual than I, because those environments that you describe, I'd get frustrated and bring an Uzi in the next day. Just tell everybody you're missing the point. The point is you are resource constrained. You do have some of these issues.
I know that. That's why I made a whole lot of money.
Oh,
I mean, a whole lot of money. And those things happen from a business perspective. You know, you're only given so much headcount to prove. I could get basically the AMD, the AMD project 30 years ago that they brought me in to solve was they were going to save multiple millions and millions of dollars to deliver chips, because basically chips take 3-4 years to design and debug to then roll out and go through fabrication chemicals. Anyway, the software was going to do that, but they only were given 6 people to do the job and one PhD scientist to explain to them kind of how to do it, to create a prototype to then go and say, hey, this is the right project. So those are the kind of projects I was brought in on. Or like at IBM, there was political issues at a board of director meeting where they didn't agree. And so they needed a moderator to solve that particular problem. And it was all about everyone was doing their own thing and trying to just get the job done. So that, I mean, I've run across that a lot. And so you only have so many people to do so. So, you know, your investment is 1 week to do the mesh. Well, great. We also need this a week or two to do an IDE to train all the people. And then we need processes and policies. Those things are realities to large direction and well financed, and the finance agrees with the vision of the
Yeah.
the the deliverable that they're going to go generate revenue. I mean, it all comes down to dollars. So that's what I was asking about,
Oh, yeah.
is in, you know, from an executive level, what's my return on the investment at what point? Because everyone wants to be first. I can't hire 30 security people, which is the right thing to do. I can get one, you know. So anyway, that's just kind of this perspective I was asking. I
Cool.
don't know enough about service mesh. I'm certain with the C and CF basically process to even get a project in there. It's got to be well validated and required function. But there's a whole lot of those products that say me first, and it's hard to, you know, for people that are creating new things, where should I invest those man hours to get an IDE and get all these things so that, hey, someone's going to give me an extra $500,000 for another 6 months to do stuff.
Right.
You know, they don't give a shit about a service mesh. They
Yeah.
want to see the flashy crap. So that's kind of what I was,
Yeah.
yeah, how your knowledge in mentoring and other people, someone else on the, I can't remember, is like, yeah, you got to do it first. Well, a whole lot of things have to be done first. So think about it as a small group of 25 guys trying to, like, hey, we're going to put this together. Okay, we need the service mesh done once we finish the prototype or before we finish the prototype. We need the automated testing system in the CI/CD and the life cycle. When do we need all that? Well, it's useless until you got some code. So that's all the perspective. I'm sorry, I'm elaborating too much, but you know,
Yeah.
that's what most people, I mean, they're going to have to go to the investor and say, I need a service mesh, I need an IDE, and they got to be able to explain. And no matter what you are in huge corporations, they brought me in to solve these problems. They weren't funded adequately to get whatever they wanted to be done. And they knew they needed to. Another example is how many people write the code, actual code, doesn't have anything to do with service mesh, that is easily translatable to do an international delivery. In other words, are you writing your code with message tables and all your errors can be swapped out to multiple languages around the world? No one says, I don't need to do that. Everyone knows English. Well, you just cut out certain markets, like in Europe and France. It's like you can't sell to the military or the government there because they only accept stuff in their language. So, you know, service mesh is one of those many things you need to do to finish the product to, you know, be the best TikTok, you know, in the world, and worth a whole lot of money, and you still ain't making a damn cent, you know, because you invested the money wisely and got to the end result. So that's kind of what I was thinking about.
I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Burton, you might have a couple of other things to say. This actually, I think that there's a new talk that maybe I'd like to give, and it might be just be like, hey, what's the value of a service mesh? Like, when if you lay one down, what do you get? The things that I talked to in the slides, and maybe it should just be done through pure demo of like, here's a mesh. As a matter of fact, like, let me show you guys this. This is it's really nice that we're having this conversation. kubectl. If I do a watch kubectl get pods all, and so on in my environment, I'm running Docker desktop on my Mac here. It's running Kubernetes. Turns out I'm running one service mesh here, Kuma, which is relatively small. This piece of software is a management plane. Service meshes are made up of data planes, a control plane, or a data plane, a control plane, and a management plane. And Meshery is the tool that we use as a management plane. Meshery, in this case, supports 8 different service meshes and lets you quickly deploy them. So for open service mesh, which is one of the ones that, well, not one of the ones, but the one that Microsoft had announced a few weeks ago, Mesh3 will go ahead and interface with your Kubernetes environment and quickly deploy open service mesh, or OSM. Part of the value of most of the meshes that you'll find today have to deal with the fact that they'll provide some telemetry. So they're deploying a small instance of Grafana and Prometheus for this particular mesh. What we're looking at in this mesh is their control plane. And so they have three different pods, as I'm assuming 3 different deployments. One of the greater pieces of value, it really depends on what type of environment you're coming from, but a real big piece of value that people find is like the ability to visualize what the heck is going on. And by that, I mean like a visual topology ends up being quite helpful. The open source community that's building Mesh3 is building a visual topology to show you real-time traffic, to let you manipulate that traffic, configure it, like visually design the mesh so that you can say, no, I want to redirect any traffic that has a JWT where Alan is logged in. We'll redirect him to the gold. He's a gold subscriber or sorry, whatever the logic is there. But yeah, it's kind of going back for a second to like, hey, when and why to deploy a mesh. It's an interesting thing. A lot of what the mesh is providing that people are aware of today is the same thing that you can get other places. It just brings them all under one central point of control. It's kind of like using a piece of monitoring tool. If that monitoring tool can centralize your logs and your metrics and do SNMP and do HTTP and do like the more of it can be in a single pane of glass. That's kind of nice. There's no context switching between the logging system and what happened at that time, and then the graphical charts and Grafana what happened at this time. Like rather, you find a lot of value when you use a Datadog or something similar, and it's showing you all those signals kind of in one view, so that you don't have to context switch. Will you consider that it's kind of part of the same value proposition of the service mesh is like, hey, you can get API gateway functionality elsewhere and get load balancing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. See, to me, there's no doubt if I was my business case was, startup company, I got 25 guys, and I go after monitoring first. There's some monitoring products out there that can monitor your code all the way down to the actual line of code, when you're having problem when you're developing the code. And so it can monitor the system, the processes, and all that. But if you buy a license from some of these monitoring products, I've seen them demo where, okay, and then we pushed and we built their code and it went out here and it crapped out. And well, what line did it crap out on? The monitoring tool had a GUI or an add-on or a plugin that brought it up to the actual operating system and hooked into their IDE. It's like, well, here's the line of code, and here, oh, I forgot to initialize this or whatever they did. Yeah, I can see the return on investment from I'm trying to build something, and monitoring your resources, your utilization of your product, how much it's going through, and how much network traffic is going through. I can see that. So I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lee.
No.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate you mentioning that. Just go and deploy it, and then break off little pieces as we go. Because like you referenced like logging and stuff and CI/CD and those other things, and those are easy and well known to be small pieces. And you select your CI/CD solution, for example, you get that right away. You get it to automatically build on every commit. That's just a small piece. But when researching service mesh and stuff, a lot of the times it's like, look, you can do this and this and this and this. It just goes off. And you're like, oh my god, no, wait, hold on. let's just get everything stable and everybody comfortable, and then we'll go back and do the service mesh. It's not, well, at least for me anyway, it's not advertised that you can just put it there without it affecting anything, because the way it sounds is like when you install it or when you deploy it, you have to configure all of your networking and all of this other stuff. It's like, man, I don't have to deal with that right now. I'll come back to it. But the way you're saying it, just put it out there, let it sit idle or whatever, and then maybe later we'll start adding some metrics, and then then we'll do some circuit breaker and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that helped. Yeah, I think that, yeah, you can imagine why all the literature on service mesh or a piece of tech will say, will espouse or it will promote all the capabilities of the thing, and then trying to convince you that it's quite powerful and you should use it because you can benefit in any number of ways. And
it's also like information overload. Like, well,
yeah.
I don't want all that. Hold on, just back off. Leave me alone for a little while.
Yeah, where's step one? And so, yeah, that's a good thing to note, is that and actually this is funny because like a couple of years ago, or at least for me, like a couple of years ago, a lot of times people would find a little bit of discomfort with the magic sprinkles of a service mesh. And by that, I mean the notion that the ability to sidecar a container or a utility container next to your application container was a bit more of a novel concept, or not as broadly used of an approach. And then over time, people have kind of gotten more comfortable with, hey, maybe you just drop in a utility container for a little bit just to maybe debug or troubleshoot or something. And now the approach that most service meshes, not all of them, have taken, is to leverage the notion that you can deploy a secondary container or a tertiary, or however many containers you have in your pod, and that being a service proxy. That you would sidecar this proxy, and that's part of that's really what makes up the data plane, and it's what makes up part of the service mesh, is that it's transparent. What the magic sprinkles were, that was happening auto-magically. Like you took your regular Kubernetes manifest, your application manifest, and did kubectl apply, and all of a sudden there was a second container next to your other one. And it's not like that was a bad thing. It was just, wait a second, how did that happen? I didn't even tell, I didn't instruct Kubernetes to necessarily do that. And in that time, people have come to understand the mechanics by which that happens and become more comfortable. And the notion that these service proxies are, they're like, again, to kind of draw the analogy back to the days of old, or maybe the current days for some of us, which is like, hey, there's a layer two, you could, in physical networking, you might think of it as like anyway, there's a transparent router that's there, a transparent firewall, intelligent firewall that's there, that can do a lot of stuff with the packets, but might not be doing anything at all. And as a matter of fact, if it fails, someone unplugs the power cord, or if the service proxy fails in your I'm sorry, like the control plane, there's different failure modes for a service mesh. So but what I was trying to say is if, like, let's say the control plane goes down, those proxies are sitting there running, doing whatever the control plane had told them to do. They'll just keep doing that. Or if you didn't configure them to do anything, yeah, I guess I'm kind of repeating what I had said before, which is then you can go over and and my recommendation would be to just seek out, and maybe Alan had said this as well, is just seek out first a bit of telemetry, because it's just read only. It's just new signals that you would configure your service mesh to emit, or you would configure your sidecar proxies to, hey, let me know how many requests per second are being received on every service or every pod. That's nice. That doesn't mean that you're telling it to mess with the traffic, or it's just an accounting machine. Hey, if you've ever looked at Apache logs, like all the HTTP requests that come through an Apache server, web server, or an Nginx web server, a lot of the logs that you'll get out of a service mesh pretty similar. It's just like it's access logs and like who was asking for it and when, and so that's not very intrusive, or you're not telling it to mutate something.
Yeah, that's good because you know the big, well, I don't know, like it seems like the big selling point of the service message, we can control all of your network traffic. Like, well, I don't want that. You know, I'm scared of putting that in, especially while we're in the process of migrating. We're not fully comfortable where we're at, and you know, and so adding the service mesh that is advertising, like I will control all of the connections and routes and all this other stuff. Like, well, don't, you know. But just putting it out there and then say, just tell me what's happening is a nice sort of baby step into the world.
It's illuminating, kind of take the blinders off, and then yeah, like yes, there are 100 and something traffic manipulation things to do, and man, if I'm operating it, and I'm operating 100 something services, and I'd probably poop my pants. Like, you know, I don't want to be the one, and I don't understand what's going on with this YAML and what's really going to happen when the mesh takes a hold of that YAML and does what I think I told it to do. I think I told it to redirect traffic that way, but I wasn't clear to me that there was a hey, I wanted to do a trial run first. Okay, I know I can do that and set up my own infrastructure to do, but like it might be nice to have a management plane or some other tool that can show me what a dry run looks like. These are the kinds of things that are planned for Meshery. But anyway, when you do get to the traffic routing things, that yeah, again, like my perspective, and it's funny because I really feel like this is kind of the same perspective that, hey, if you're born of the cloud, or if you're mode 2, or if you're DevOps, or if you're whatever, you know, all the things that we call it, that it takes a while to come to this, that small, frequent, incremental change is, for some, when you say change, they say management. That's funny. That's the first time I've said that. I have to chuckle at myself.
That's
But,
perfect. Yeah.
you know, that like, and so to them, that means, yeah, change the last Friday of every 8 months, we'll do a change. Like, and actually, until you've lived on the other side, and come to understand change every 8 minutes, because it's so super small and we're changing it all the time anyway. That means we've got all the right tools to handle all the, like, now I feel so much more comfortable because we're just, you want to change something? Fine. Yeah, we just changed something 6 minutes ago. So, you know, go ahead and change it again. You know, like, that may be extreme, the minutes that I'm using, but for some, they're not that far from that. And so I think it depends upon how you were brought up, or maybe where you've spent. Have you been on the other side of having a CI system? Because if you have, and anyway, meshes, even they're scary. Or
I'm dying to jump in, Lee. It's like, yeah, I know where you come from. I've been on the other side. I don't like my product changed at all.
yeah,
From a delivery point of view, as in I got it, it functions, it's doing what I want. Like on my phone, shit, I want security updates. I don't want them to change. Oh, well, this is over here and that's over here because someone decided that that's the better thing to do. I want to choose that if I want to, versus, I mean, so yeah, I want security updates, things of that sort, but I don't like, from a user's point of view, upgrades to my phone, changing all the little tools, you know, just a little bit here and a little bit there. Similar to, you remember Meetup when they got bought out, and everyone loved that product. And then the new company bought it, and it's like, oh, well, we're no longer doing this. And people complain, it's like, hey, I didn't like that. It's like the product just, screw you, customer. We're going to go this way, and it's going to be better in 2 or 3 years. And it is kind of better, but it was painful to go through those 2 or 3 years by just shipping less functionality for a while with that particular product. I mean, that's a very public product. And I mean, I saw many of people complain about it and say, we're going to mutiny the Meetup tool and go to some other tool. But too much change like that created, issues with the product. But the attitude of the company was, hey, it's our product. We'll just move on and deal with it. So it's just a different method now. It's like if your scotch came in a different shaped and sized bottle every time and a different label on it every time because someone decided to change it, it would be kind of frustrating when you walked into the liquor store to find your scotch. It's like, I wonder what the hell it looks like now. It's still scotch on the inside, so the product still in general solve problems. Anyway, I was just messing with you right there, but that's an example of constant change created a major problem years ago with Meetup tool.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is it's true with the first statement that you made, or I don't know if you said it all the way, but it's, hey, if everything's static, that's about as low risk as you can get. Like that's about as stable as you can get. So like, let's start there. And then as I agree with that perspective, I will espouse the other perspective as like, well, an acknowledgement that everything can't be static, or it does have to change. And given that, okay, then let's lean into some.
Might as well change 80 times today then. What the hell?
Oh yeah, yeah. Which means that we've got all the right tooling and processes in place to like.
But I think there's a compromise in the two. I mean, from a customer perspective, I mean, a company that's some people love and some people hate is Microsoft. They created standards that all their products. So if you go from a word processor to a spreadsheet to something else, they never really changed very much. Those menus that we were all used to pulling down, and they added functionalities in those menus, but for 30 years they were pretty much in general, you could, on the left was save or file or print or something. And so they evolved their product and added functionality, but kind of set a standard. They've evolved over time and had different menu bars up there, but as a standard, they've always followed that. And that got a lot of people that didn't know about computers to use them and get more familiar with, and then expand to their other product lines of a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or something like that. So I think there's a compromise on, you constantly change. People can get overwhelmed by that, because if you own a company, the marketing guys that go out and market it and sell it, inevitably, no matter how big your company, will sell something you don't have, and will bring it back and say, hey, we got this $1 million deal. If we could just have chickens come out of the screen and dance around the desk and go back in the screen. And just something like that. And I guaranteed them that we would have the chickens run in 6 months. And it's just like, what? So the sales team always sells more functionality, but that kind of pissed off the other kind of businesses that didn't want it. But you just run into business problems. So change is inevitable, and yes, we need change, but overkill of change, to the Meetup example, created a lot of people pissed off at that product for many years, and finally people ignored it and got over with it. But some businesses would have gone out of business because they did so many changes when they were trying to build their market share.
There is we're about at the thank you for that, Alan. Thank you. We're about at the time, which means it's about bedtime for me, because I'm about out of energy. There's a ton of things to talk about with this tech, and I really enjoy the question you guys are asking, and I also am realizing that, like, being a nerd focused on one niche, like, that I've gotten the luxury of kind of going deep into this, and then and while sticking my head in the sand and focusing on it, I'm ignoring in a large respect what some of the things that Alan's highlighting, like, yeah, but where's the business value again? Like, how are you articulating this in business terms? And then what Burton is saying as well is like, hey, we're, you know, or the this environment is, you know, generally generally sort of follow suit with the notion that there's a series of tooling that you'll that most generally want to consider and use, and service mesh is one of those tools. But on the trail, or where does it land on the trail? And the thing, and maybe next time we talk, or next time we have a meetup that does talk about service meshes, is we should just do a few, well, you know, simple, small but concrete demonstrations of like deploying Linkerd, or deploying a couple of different meshes with different sample apps, and showing the time that it takes to get to value of using that.
That would be great. Side by side, yeah, it's like a service mesh, and here's something, a small cluster of 2 machines or 3 machines without a service mesh, and here's Linker, and here's a couple of other tools on top. Yeah, side by side would be great. It's for someone to go sell this to their business to say, we need to spend more money on this now. You know,
Yeah,
that would help people take it to their boss.
yeah, that'd be awesome to say, look, I would just meet up in less than an hour. We had a service mesh set up and running, and this is what we were able to see after that happened.
You know
And then
what?
we can come back to it later, you know,
Yeah.
and add more. So that's
One
awesome.
thing that might be, I don't know if this is but here's if anybody's got, so there are sample apps that I readily have access to, or use use pretty frequently. Does anybody have an app that's meaningful to them that you might prefer that we were to work with, do a lab on? You know, I figured I'd ask just because it might make it more real for you, you know, in that sense.
I don't have anything.
And they're if something comes to mind, you know, let me know. But otherwise, there's like 4 or 5 sample apps that we use in our workshops and things to show folks. But I also recognize, like, sometimes your eyes will roll when you're looking at the sample app, and you're like, yeah, of course it works well with that one, because that one is, you know.
Yeah, like the Istio, is that Istio that does the booksellers thing? It's like, yeah, well, of course it works, because they built it right, you know. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Huh, what do you know? There were no glitches, or what do you know, like that was, yeah.
But perhaps like the Docker voting, is it the Docker that has that voting app thing?
Yeah, the cats and dogs.
Yeah, that's a simple. I think they have like what 3 services as part of that.
Yeah, if I recollect, it's been a while. It's like a Redis web server, obviously. I thought a Redis.
But that's one that's, you know, not built by a service mesh to show a service mesh.
No, that's it. Yeah, let me write that down, just because we were gonna. Docker has been asking us to post a blog on docker.com. We were gonna, and inevitably we were gonna use a different sample app, or like not that. Yeah, the Docker.
Then I'll just take some of the percentage of the royalties, right?
Yeah, no. As a matter of fact, I mean, Bert, just send over your. We'll come co-author it with me, man. Come, or I know that this sounds kind of funny, and I'll say it funny so that you don't feel like you have to do it, but come byline it with me. I'm serious. They've been asking for like 3 of them, and like, I just.
That would be great, because I've been I took the summer off basically of
Rub it in, man. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily by choice, more of a mental health break, let's say.
Sure.
But yeah, so it'd be great to work with you, Lee, and to contribute to the
yeah, that'd be nice. I'm not gonna. I need. Yeah, good. I got more stuff going on than I can possibly. And the thing is like a lot of the things won't get done unless, unless there's. Well, fair enough. I really enjoyed the meandering. I hope it's helpful. I know some of the, I'm frustrated by the lack of even the lack of clarity and succinctness around the response for what are the signposts, what are the indicators that signal to me it's time for a mesh. There's a lot of literature out there, but I think most of it probably does what you guys were describing, which is it tells you about all of the things, and in the process, loses all of us. And so,
Yeah, it's too much. It's like a volcano or roaring river. It's like, what the heck? I already got enough crap in my email and on my screen. What's the, basically, I like your idea of being able to do maybe side by record one and time it with the timer on the bottom. Here's the service mesh and we're doing, I mean, but I wouldn't, I mean, a demo that really runs enough containers to look like a business value. So this one's running, you know, 600 containers or whatever, and here's with a service mesh, and then here's a different with linker on top or whatever, and here's one without, and the business value is you can have this information. Well, it's all a matter of money though.
yeah, the tool that we'll use to show that meshery tool, it in an interesting way, it takes a sample, like each of the service meshes generally come with their own sample app, and it supports each of them, and it actually supports like taking one and deploying that same sample app across different meshes, which is kind of nice because then you're like, you gain some familiarity with the sample app, and then as you deploy it across the other ones, you can kind of get a sense of the difference because you've got a consistent. Yeah. Okay. A lot of times when we do that, we'll talk about performance, which is a point of interest, but actually just functionally, what's the difference as well? Yeah. Okay. Huh. Fair enough. Troy, thanks for pointing this out. This is I hadn't seen this before.
Yeah, I got introduced to that not too long ago too. It's pretty cool.
They've done good. I see the color.
And then you can pick the squares at the top too. Yeah.
Nice. Yep. My I don't know if it's OCD or what it is, but just when there's a list, but it's not exhaustive, it grates on me. Like, it's a good list, and they're missing like quite a few observability offerings in here as well.
Yeah, probably missing about 500 or 600 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
These are the more popular ones for the people who put the tool together in that part of the world, wherever that part of the world was.
Yeah, this I believe is from a what do you call it? A company that does contracting sort of work. So they do some like evaluation and stuff on each of those tools, which is nice to. They write about it and say what's really good and what's not so good.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, from an agnostic perspective, from in a truthful way, or from their experience anyway.
Yeah, which is just to sort of explain the way why it's not as exhaustive, is because they've actually looked into those things.
Yeah, I like that they just have that brief description. It's like boom, and it pops up. It's like, okay, this does this, this does this.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for being kind with the jokes, I guess, and for sharing today. It was really nice to be able to share.
Yeah, sure. I hope I didn't overstep you, Lee.
No. As a matter of fact, no, your responses actually were the most founded in reality for a lot of organizations. Reality is, I could give two craps about your newfangled whatchamacallit, the service mesh or the what it doesn't even. Yeah. Anyway, there's the fortunate thing for us nerds is that digital transformation is a real deal. Like, and if these executives that are uncomfortable with technology don't get hip with it, well, it has a way of working itself out, I guess.
Yeah, that almost happened to Docker too. It's still evolving. And when you were saying Docker's approaching you, which Docker?
The original, I guess, if that's how
The
you.
public one versus Mirantis Docker?
Yep, not Mirantis.
Not Mirantis. Yeah, Mirantis I think their conference was this week.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was it was this week. And on their keynote, they said, yep, there's a lot of y'all that have small applications and don't need this monster orchestration. We are not going to drop Swarm. We're going to maintain it for these smaller type of operations that don't need this huge orchestration. And that was pretty interesting because that was an issue last year. People were investing in different, that technology. And
I do. Yeah. Yeah. See, sing it, man. Yeah. I totally agree. Like, I mean, I love me some Kubernetes. I mean, I think they all have a place, I guess is what I'm saying.
well, thanks. And say hey to Roscoe.
Yeah, I will. I will. We didn't hear him tonight, but yeah. Oh, very nice. Very, very good to see all of you. Catch you hopefully in about a month. So.
Okay.
That's great.
All right.
Thank you.
See you guys. Bye, Vern. Bye, Bob.
Bye.
Bye, Troy. See you, Jeff.